Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Woman Up. My name's Leah Whiston. I'm joined by the lovely Sue Clark.
Hi Leah, how are you today?
Very well, can't complain. Well,
It's, you could.
I can, but we don't have that long. So today we will be talking about the toxic impact of gender identity ideology and the broader identity politics that are infiltrating government institutions right here in Australia. These ideologies are not only reshaping workplace culture, but are also taking a serious toll on the safety, morale, and mental well-being of public servants. Joining us today is Emma, a public servant with a first-hand experience of these entrenched ideologies in workplace training and policies. She'll share her insights on how this is affecting government workers like herself, and we'll talk about practical ways that employees can connect, strategize, and push back against the madness from within. So, hi, Emma.
Hi.
Hi, thank you.
How
Hi,
are
thanks
you?
so much for having me. I'm good, thank you.
Good. Um, can you start by telling us about the sector that you work in? Obviously, don't give away too much because you need to
Yeah,
be anonymous, but if you
yeah,
could just give us a little outline of what the sector you work in and what your day to day looks like.
yeah, sure. Yeah, so I work in a state government service in the domestic violence area. And we support women and children experiencing domestic violence, typically almost always perpetrated by their male partners or ex-partners or fathers.
Mhm.
And yeah, the whole history of that kind of work is, the feminist domestic violence practice, an understanding of male pattern violence, an understanding of uh, the nature of domestic violence as being, overwhelmingly perpetrated by men against women and children. Um, yeah, so it's been a very interesting turn of events over the last few years, or the last decade, say, to see the impact of gender identity ideology on this area of work, and also on the workplace in general.
Can I ask a quick, just a side question because actually it just popped into my head when you were saying that. Sometimes we hear from men's rights activists that
Mm,
it's actually women who are the more violent sex, right?
Certainly, the truth is that the numbers are rather startling, actually, according to the Centers for Disease Control in the most recent national survey. 5.3 million men and 4.7 million women reported physical violence by an intimate partner within the past year. There were slightly more men than women in that last reporting period.
But the day I see images of bruised men on those billboards, I'll be less prone to being offended at seeing the images of beaten women. The myth we embrace about all this is simple and designed for the simple-minded. Domestic violence is almost exclusively perpetrated by men against women. Even better, it means brutish thugs pounding the crap out of Mary Poppins for burning the toast. And here and there, that's true. This nonsense didn't spring up out of thin air. It was and is the raison d'etre of feminists in their claim of patriarchal domination and how that extended into the home and family. It makes sense, especially if you don't think about it, and of course we didn't, so the idea spread like chlamydia in a cat house. We have a common expression for much of the men's violence in these situations. It's called hitting back. There is no real excuse for violence, ever, some would say. But there is legal and, in the belief of many, moral justification for self-defense. Either way, it is a judgment call made after and only after an attack has been made. I'll leave it to the attacked to make their own call.
How often do you see a man coming in for help or resources because he's experiencing violence from his female
yeah,
partner?
Yeah, so the type of work that I do, we don't work with men, but there are other services in the sector that do work with men, male victims, or men who identify as victims. There's the research and the evidence base consistently shows across the world, impossible to argue with that. The victims are overwhelmingly women and children, and the perpetrators are overwhelmingly men. No one's saying that men can't be victims of violence. They are quite often, but they're typically victims of violence by other men. So the thing that people have to remember as well is that domestic violence is not just physical assaults. It's a pattern of controlling, coercive behaviour. So, like, it's a complex area, and I could go into it in more detail, but I'm not sure how much time we have. But yes, there are male victims. I think that when you're working with men who present as victims, you have to be really skilled in assessment, because even though there are men that are victims of coercive, controlling domestic violence, it's also a really common presentation of perpetrators to present themselves as victims. It's extremely common, and so it's just a tricky area that I think people have to be really well skilled in for assessment. And there's a lot of other research and evidence bases that I could go into to give more context to that, but it can be non-physical coercive control. Coercive control has just been legislated against in certain states in Australia.
There's national agreement by governments across the country that coercive control is abusive behaviour that creates fear and takes away a person's freedom. But the approach by law varies from state to state. In Queensland, it will soon be a standalone criminal offence with a maximum 14-year prison term. The penalty in New South Wales is up to 7 years jail. Tasmanian legislation singles out some coercive behaviours, while Western Australia is in the early stages of consultation. To be convicted of coercive control in Queensland, you must be an adult and in a domestic relationship with another person. It's conduct that consists of domestic violence and occurs more than once. It would likely cause the other person harm. And it's not only physical, it could be emotional, financial or psychological. The harm could be temporary or permanent. Some examples may be preventing someone from getting a job, isolating them from their family or friends, following someone or repeatedly phoning, texting or emailing them. Coercive control is considered the biggest predicting factor in intimate partner homicide. It will become an offence in Queensland in 2025.
Back in 2012, there was no conversation around domestic and family violence, and my family have been on a journey to ensure that the conversation is highlighted.
Coercive control will become a criminal offence from next year. It aims to capture a pattern of controlling and isolating behaviour within a relationship.
Violence is not always visible. You don't have to hit to hurt people.
You will need to make sure that our prosecutors and our police are well set up. Let's be inclusive. Anyone that identifies as a woman is a woman. Anyone that identifies as a woman is a woman.
And I know in the UK and Scotland and other places, they've had that legislation for quite a while. So it is a complex area.
I'm interested in understanding how they can legislate against coercive control. What does it look like practically, to legislate against coercive control?
So, I mean, for instance, just an example, in New South Wales, it's just recently become law that there is a new offence of a course of conduct of abusive behaviour.
New South Wales has become the first Australian jurisdiction to have a standalone offence dedicated to coercive control as part of the fight against domestic violence. From today, perpetrators of coercive control will face up to 7 years behind bars. The offence oversees a pattern of behaviour that may include financial and emotional abuse, violence and intimidation, as well as the tracking of someone's movements. Stronger bail reforms will also come into effect, making it more difficult for those accused of violent offences to secure bail.
And so, yeah, that new law came into effect I think it was in July, and we're just starting to see. Oh gosh, I'll have to check now the numbers, but we're starting to see a trickle of charges where people have actually been charged by the police with this new offence. I'm not quite sure what the numbers are, but they're very low. My understanding I think there was a media article the other day that said that the police are investigating 80 matters. I'll have to double check the numbers, but it's very slow. But we knew that would happen because that's what happened in the UK and Scotland and other places that have introduced this legislation.
Well, get their head around it too, don't they, to determine are they a victim of coercive control?
Yeah, and it's a bit, it's problematic because the police are not, at times, the police can have trouble identifying who is the perpetrator and who is the victim. And, so sometimes, we see in our work that women are wrongly identified as the perpetrator. And that can cause all sorts of problems for that woman, and her children, and and so there were some misgivings with the introduction of this new legislation about how this was going to impact women who are victims, and was it going to be used against women like some other laws are. So that's still, we're still seeing how that plays out, and there's a review coming out at the end of this year. So they've committed to reviewing it every few months, every quarter, I think. So there is information online for people that want to look into that more.
Really hard, given the work that you do, to now see that men are identifying as women.
Yeah, yeah.
Impact even more, I would think.
Yes, in different ways. It's very, how can I put it? Yeah, it is having an impact. Obviously we're hearing about the impact of it around the world as well, and here in Australia, with, men who adopt a trans identity or who say that they're women, are able to, enter women's refuges, women's spaces, even men who commit crimes and claim that they're women are, incarcerated in women's prisons and then go on to assault the women that are there. Yeah.
Even women when they're charged.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And another one too, another impact is on data collection because, and reporting of crimes as well, because, crimes that are committed by men who say that they're women are sometimes recorded as crimes committed by women. Mm-hmm. And that's skewing the data on violence because, as I said before, the data and the research and the evidence about violence is so clear for so many decades about the qualitative differences between men's violence and women's violence. Mm-hmm. And so that's interesting and scary to think how that could be affected by this.
The amount of men in prison to the amount of women in prison, it's really such a vastly different number. Because there's fair go for Women Queensland, and they get this is for Queensland only, the prison stats every year. They do, Steph Hughes gets the stats,
yes,
right, and she analyses them. And so when you compare the number of men in male prisons to women in women's prisons, it's nowhere near the number.
Yeah, sure. But I think the rates at which women are being incarcerated is growing or, increasing in a really problematic way. And it's because of women being, criminalised for,
really seems like they're out to get women, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I do think it's linked to the issue, the phenomenon of, difficulties for police in identifying victims and perpetrators. But yeah, and then this whole gender identity ideology issue doesn't help as well. So yeah.
Yeah, there's an increase of hatred of women because of it. Men that identify as women, they really hate women.
Yeah. Yes.
They're misogynist, and this has opened up the floodgates for them.
Yes.
Like say, I don't agree with the transing of kids, but you women, you fought for equality. This is your punishment. That's so often, and you just think, so they're gender critical because they don't want to see the transing of kids.
Interesting.
The fact that we're being oppressed by this cohort of men who think that they're women.
I just think there's a big proportion of men who couldn't care less if women lost their rights. They're so indifferent. They're so indifferent to it.
100%.
It's not necessarily that they're misogynistic or that they actively hate women, but it just is not in their radar.
Until a woman...
Yeah, well, it's happening right now, and there's not many speaking up.
Yeah.
So how have you gone in the workplace with the training for the
Yeah, so I've been quite lucky so far to not have had to do much training specifically, but there is like a constant onslaught of propaganda, about transgender and gender identity ideology. So, I think last month there were no less than 3 special days. One was the Trans Day of Remembrance. Another one was Pronoun Day. All the 3, I'm pretty sure there were 3 days in 1 month for trans gender identity.
Wasn't it Trans Day of Visibility?
Yes, that's the other one. It was all in the same
I didn't
month.
know about the Pronoun Day, actually. I'm missing out on that.
Yes. Then, the whole month of June, it was, it seems to be all the time.
Constant. Yeah. And there's, there's, little things that come up on the internet, there's encouragement, to share your pronouns on your signature.
And do you?
No, it's not compulsory at the moment. I mean, I don't know if they would succeed in making it compulsory. They probably would. But it's just recommended at the moment, and I just, steadfastly ignore it.
So are you noticing many other people doing it?
Yeah.
And have you and are you noticing many people pulling away from it?
So I do know of other people at my workplace who are really concerned about this and who I would say share gender critical views, but they're too scared to speak up, and I am as well at the moment at work, because I'll share a story with you in a minute, but I definitely know other people who are gender critical at work,
and there's probably a lot more that haven't said anything.
Definitely. Definitely, because like we all know, they're just ordinary normal beliefs that are actually based in science and fact, about human sex, but everyone's terrified to because if you say anything, you will probably be disciplined, you'll be face disciplinary action, and you could lose your job, and no one's in a position to take that risk.
Environment of fear.
So it has an impact directly at work in that we have males who who say that they're women working there.
In the domestic violence sector?
Yes.
And are they facing women who are coming to you for help?
No, not in a therapeutic way or a direct way, but they do have contact with the public. So, people who ring in would have contact with those people. And those people use the women's toilets at work. So there's a lot of and there was obviously no consultation or discussion or anything about this.
So when you hear these blokes that say, I use the women's toilets and I've always been very welcome, no one says anything, is that because they are being accepted, or is it because people obviously can't say or are just scared to talk about it?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure what the views are of those particular people in the workplace that I am, but like the people the men who identify as women, I'm not sure what they think, but it's certainly not that they're all just accepted. It's that women are afraid to speak out, and anyone who disagrees with it are afraid to speak out. So it's not accepted across the board, although there may be some people who don't have a problem with it. But yeah, that's definitely not across the board. Yeah. So that's one way that it directly impacts people at work. And then the other way is in like your language and how you talk. Like the way you talk is policed. You're not allowed to say certain things. So I remember I got sort of reprimanded earlier this year for using the phrase male who identifies as a woman. Usually I would say, a male who identifies as, I would usually say a male who says he's a woman, actually. That's pretty much usually what I would say. But on this occasion, I said male who identifies as a woman. And even that was not acceptable. I was reprimanded and told that I have to say trans woman. And I was really scared in that meeting. And I really wanted to argue my case. And, I didn't want to agree. I didn't want to, what's the word? Submit, for want of a better word. I wanted to argue, but I knew if I did, I would get into more trouble and I could lose my job. And, I can't afford to do that. So I just sort of said, okay, well, I don't agree with what you're saying that I have to say. But I actually said I'll just have to say nothing. So I'm silenced because I'm not allowed to use that phrase and I don't want to say trans woman.
No.
So I can't raise it.
Jesus.
Were you taken into a room by a few people? How did they approach it with you?
Thankfully, it was just one person. And yes, I was taken into a room. I was summoned. I was, sorry?
Were you told why you were being summoned?
Well, it was like as soon as I arrived at work one morning, it was like, oh, can you just come in here for a minute? As soon as we went into that room, I was told immediately what the issue was. Probably they couldn't tell me before that.
They're supposed to know.
Okay, right.
They're supposed to tell you and give you an opportunity to have someone to come in to represent as well. So that
interesting. So I don't even know. That's a really good point because I don't even know like what level of disciplinary action that was. Like I don't know if something has been written down or if something is
to a room.
Sorry?
That they can't take you into a room basically for discipline without first giving you an idea what it is and giving you an opportunity to have a support person in there with you.
Yeah, well, that would have been really nice, actually. And I know who I would have brought in. I would have brought in another gender-critical colleague.
So the way they went about it, that's what I guess I was a union delegate in the Federal Public Servant.
Right.
and they can't do it that way. So next time if they want to call you in, what's it about, and give you an opportunity to take in a support person.
But it's easier said than done when you're going into work, you're there and they're pulling you into a room before you even know it, you're in the room.
It is easier said than done.
Yeah. But for next time,
where they bluff you, that's what they want to do.
Because you're right. Like, I didn't know what the issue was until I was in the room. So, sorry, Sue?
That's ambushing you.
Yeah.
Which is not
It was
right.
really scary. My heart was pounding. I was shaking. I felt sick in my stomach. It was horrible.
Yeah. No, that the way they approached that was completely wrong. Were they a manager?
Sue, do you reckon there's anything that Emma could do now, or if she, not Emma specifically, but if that happened to someone, would you be able to have recourse to kind of get anything done about the way that was done?
Well, it basically the union, that's just the way.
The unions are all captured, aren't they?
The problem is, that was one of the reasons why I was so scared.
All you need to know is what your rights are, and your rights are to be told what the issue was about before you enter the room. They tell you and you go and you want a support person, you say to them, look, I'm just going to arrange to have a support. You're entitled to have a support person with you.
Mm.
So I mean, an opportunity to do that. They can't ambush you like that.
Yeah. Oh, I believe you. I'm not sure if they considered this to be like an official disciplinary action. I'm not quite sure.
Your response to it. You were just saying, your response to when you were taken into a room, not knowing what they were going to say or do, and your response, your bodily response to it was fear.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's what all public servants should do, is say, well, what's it about? And then if it's something that's controversial, you just say, well, you want a witness there.
100%. That would have been, that is really good advice. So, for anybody else who's going through this, I think, think on your feet and just go, whoa, hang on a second. What's this about? Do I need someone? Or no, like, what's this about? And then you can say, okay, I need someone in this meeting. Yeah, because that would have been really good to have done that. And if it happens again, I will.
To do with your work. But even then that they'd say, look, can we go in and discuss such and such? But you were basically ambushed because it was something that the organisation considered you had really done something shocking by saying a male that identifies as a woman. And that's a bodily response you get to it. The fear, it just goes to show the fear that this creates.
Yes.
It's an unsafe environment when you feel like that, that's your response to being questioned. You know that it's basically become authoritarian.
Yeah. And it was on so many levels as well. It was on the level of, knowing that, we're talking about the existence of women here, like the definition of woman, like of women being, adult human females. And so there was that level of fear and thinking, I want to fight this, I want to say this. But then there was the other level of fear of, the day-to-day, needing an income and losing your job and all of that. So
control this. But it's also they're forcing you to lie.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Like Nazi Germany, isn't it?
And just the lack of realization from that person that as well, like, I don't think they fully understood what they were doing. I think they were kind of a messenger.
Were they kind in the way that they delivered it to you?
Yeah, it was actually kind of delivered like they thought I just, was a bit, confused or, didn't know the right language. We know that you didn't mean to cause offence, but, this is what you should have said.
The strange thing, we are so offended by this all. It doesn't matter about our offence. They've taken identity.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't matter how offended we are, and we're completely and utterly offended by it.
Yeah. And like no insight, absolutely no insight about how this impacts women. And it's staggering.
How it impacts women and children as well.
And children, yeah.
And what made you come to the conclusion that you had to do something about this?
Yeah, well, like I've been aware of this issue for a long time, like probably a decade. And, I've been kind of, doing things online anonymously and but not really not feeling like I could do more because of this issue of, the risk of losing your job. And so I was doing lots of things behind the scenes and actually attending some actions in person, in the state that I'm in, where I would have to, wear glasses and a hat and, sort of disguise myself or whatever. And, I knew a lot of people in the gender critical and feminist groups who were doing a lot more and taking more action. And so I just realised, well, if the reason I can't do more is because the risk of losing my job, then I need to change that. Like I need to change that you can't talk about it at work. I need to change that you can't speak out about it without risking losing your job. So I just thought, oh, well, there must be other people that work in the government who feel the same way. Like I'm damn sure there are. Because, I already know some in my own workplace. And like we said before, they're really normal, ordinary beliefs. So I just thought, okay, well, we just need to connect all the people that feel the same way. And like, I realize it's going to be difficult, but we just kind of, there were, us here that are talking now and other people in the gender critical groups. And we just said, okay, we need to find a way to let other people who work in government know that they're not alone, that there are others who feel the same way, that are critical of gender identity ideology, who understand about human sex, and who are prepared to speak out if in numbers and if to try to change this silencing in the workplace. So that's kind of what that's pretty much what made me try to speak out more about it. And what we've done is we are trying to find all the gender critical people that work in government in Australia at all levels and in all areas, like all states and territories, all levels of government from federal, state and local. And we're trying to get everyone, put people in touch with each other, to provide support, to make sure people know that they're not alone, and to organise together and strategize and try to make some inroads into this silencing of the vast majority of employees in the government in Australia.
There's thousands of government employees at all different levels. I think there might be, like in the federal government, 100,000 there. And when you think of it, it's enormous numbers.
It is. And, I imagine there's a large proportion of them are all, thinking very similar to, about these concerns, but are not feeling safe to speak out. And we already do have people who have contacted us and getting in touch with us and joining us and, speaking out from different parts of Australia in different levels of government to share their stories of what they've been through in the workplace, for sharing their gender critical views, which are in fact just normal, ordinary facts and science. So
what do you hope to do? So have you had a Zoom meeting with the people that have gathered so far, or
not yet? But that's on the cards. It's been about a month that we've been gathering numbers. Numbers are steadily growing.
How have you been doing that?
Yeah. So what we've done is we've got a public group on Facebook. It's called Gender Critical in the Public Service in Australia. So anyone can follow or like that group. And people that want to get in touch, who have personal experience of working in government and being gender critical and wanting to change the fact that you can't speak about it, they can email biologicalrealityaustralia@gmail.com, and they will be put in touch with us. And we're taking great care of people's private information and treating it with utmost care and privacy and, respect. And once we receive emails from people, we will be putting everyone in touch with each other in a safe way. So it's early days, but the plan is to increase our numbers and then start to strategize and start to organize actions, start to think about actions that we can take to try to change the current situation. It would be great to get to a point where you can speak freely about these issues. The most absurd thing is that, for instance, there's the Tickle v. Giggle legal case happening in Australia, one of the biggest legal cases, in Australia, for really momentous, really momentous. And we can't talk about it at work.
Wow.
Roxy Tickle, how are you? How are you feeling today?
We will focus on that.
Tickle versus Giggle. Sal Grover, good morning. How are you feeling ahead of today's decision?
Good.
Today's ruling in the landmark case between transgender woman Roxy Tickle and Giggle for Girls app owner Sal Grover means we now live in a different Australia, according to Sex Discrimination Commissioner Anna Cody.
So what the judge found is that there's 30 years of legal precedent, legal cases which have found that woman includes trans women.
And Women's Forum Australia CEO Rachel Wong.
In practical terms, any man who feels like a woman, says he's a woman, identifies as a woman, can access female-only spaces like bathrooms, changing rooms.
Till now, the argument, what is a woman, has been stuck in a social grey area. But today, a federal court judge put it in black and white. His Honour found Tickle had been indirectly discriminated against when Tickle was kicked off Grover's Women's Only Help app.
I brought my case to show trans people that you can be brave and that you can stand up for yourself.
The app's AI gender recognition software, designed to sift through members' uploaded selfie pics and screen out men, allowed Tickle in, but Grover kicked her out. The transgender woman claimed she was legally entitled to use services meant for women, so she was discriminated against based on her gender identity.
But a small group of people have taken it upon themselves to declare that I am not who I know I am, and they have set about making my life miserable.
It's the first time alleged gender identity discrimination has been heard by our federal court, and the world was watching. Famous author J.K. Rowling and tennis great Martina Navratilova backing Grover in the 2.5-year acrimonious ideological debate, trans inclusion versus sex-based rights.
I know that I can now get on with the rest of my life, have coffee down the road with my friends, play hockey with my hockey team, and now put all of this horribleness behind me. Thank you.
Roxy, what was your feeling?
She's not going to be taking any more comments.
Tickle sued for direct and indirect discrimination, seeking $200,000 in damages. The judge only favoured indirect discrimination and ordered Grover to pay Tickle $10,000 plus costs. Because you keep referencing to Roxy Tickle as he, yet a judge has found today that Roxy Tickle is a woman.
Yeah, I mean, law is supposed to reflect reality, and in reality, this person is a male. So, I mean, you can make a court believe something, I suppose, but you're not going to make me believe it. So to be punished for acknowledging biological sex, I think puts all Australians at risk of being punished for having human instincts.
And this is a man who is abusing a woman, who has been abusing a woman for years.
Yes.
Dragging her through court whilst pregnant.
Yeah.
harassing her online for years, and you can't talk about that in the domestic violence sector. You can't
That's
even
it.
bring that.
Yeah,
That's just
unless
absolutely mind-blowing.
It
Just
is.
my mind, because governments are supposed to be apolitical. This is a political issue, and they're pushing, and that's not what government is supposed to do. They're there to administer services to the public, and so they can't take a political side. But what they've done is they're pushing this. They've politicised it. And
it's incredible. There's just an assumption that you will be on the side of Tickle. You're not allowed to, if you're on the side of Giggle, or if you have concerns about how the Sex Discrimination Act is playing out, what it means for women, if you were to say, well, this effectively means that women can't congregate without men present, you would be, I don't know what would happen. I actually don't know what would happen.
Effectively, this means that there are no female-only spaces at all. There certainly are no female-only single-sex spaces in Queensland anymore.
Yep.
The swimming pool where I take my daughter, I phoned them up and asked them, and they said, and I said, is there a possibility that there will be men in our changing rooms now? And they said yes.
Oh, God.
Yep. There are no single-sex spaces when men can identify as women. It's just
that's right. That's right.
Just think about it for more than 30 seconds, and you'll realise that this is fucking insane.
That's it. It's just unbelievable that it's happening, and people can't see that it is.
Imagine if the government was pushing a religion. I mean, this is really a religion, sort of. You know what I mean? Like it's
a belief system that you believe that men can be changed into women and people can change sex, and
the whole woke ideology is a religion, and I heard someone say it recently. It's a religion with no redemption if you sin as well. Like you can never come back if you sin. There's no forgiveness if you make the mistake of saying that a man cannot change sex and be a woman.
Yeah.
Or the worst kind of religion.
Penis, how dare you? You bigot, you transphobe, you Nazi.
Yes.
And you look at the behaviour of the Nazis. Not us that's behaving like Nazis.
Yeah, it's disturbing.
Yeah, the aggression. That's what amazes me, is the aggression that comes with it. Just questioning it. Like when I was cancelled, I was running for federal parliament. My crime was I liked an article on Facebook under my own profile, giving it the thumbs up. That was when I got cancelled, for liking an article. So it can be.
It's so powerful. It's such a powerful movement, the gender identity and trans, movement and trans lobby, and yet they claim to be so oppressed.
They're the oppressed minority, and it's violence to mistreat them or use the wrong pronoun. Yet here are 90% or more of the population living in fear and being dictated.
It's a masterstroke of patriarchy, isn't it? It's really, it's so clever. Hopefully the tide might be turning.
Well, they don't understand the power of women. You look at where we've come from. 1800s to where we almost got to, because we've been set back like how many years, how many decades. But who ever thought that men would retaliate by saying that they are women and take away women's rights?
It's even worse than going back to like before we could vote, for example. Because at least they knew who couldn't vote, because they knew who the women were. They knew what a woman was.
And it's the most ridiculous thing, isn't it? Why didn't the suffragettes just identify as men, and then they could have voted?
But the suffragettes were queer, weren't they?
Yeah, that's right. Online with this well-known trans person in Brisbane, and one of his cohorts that identifies as a woman, and he said to me, "You think you've got this spiritual connection the suffragettes, what you don't realise is the suffragettes were trying to queer women, because the reason women were so unhappy was because they were men and they couldn't express them. So they've taken the suffragette flag and they now call it the gender queer flag.
Oh, God.
So it wasn't about the vote. They were trying to queer women. So they history.
How outrageous.
We've got governments that believe this bullshit.
Oh, my God. That's just outrageous.
Emma, do you think that the events in America might change policy over here? Because I'm seeing a lot of now just loads of people just coming out and saying exactly what they think. No, it's a woman, but people cannot change sex. Get your dick out of my space. You know, they're saying it, so they're literally saying that, like politicians are saying that.
This is happening everywhere, and we have to put a line in the sand, big, fat, bold, red line, and say, hell no, no more. Like, I am going to fight like hell for this. I don't want chicks with dicks in my bathroom, in my dressing room. I don't want to be forced to change in front of a man, period. And it's a trigger for me. And I absolutely am going to go to the mat for women and girls everywhere and put a stop to it.
The fact that politicians are coming out now and saying it in America, how does policy in Australia flow from America? I've only been here 5 years, so I'm not that familiar with.
Because we've got the most powerful man in the world saying, okay, I've had enough of this bullshit. We're going back to normal. There has to be a flow-on effect.
Have you seen a difference in your workplace since the American election of people speaking to you or?
No, if anything, it was, you know, kind of, what's the word?
Disappointment.
Yeah, you know, that, and I have reservations about, I was hoping that this could all be resolved within the left, you know, but obviously that's that's not going to happen anytime soon. So I do understand people who are happy about what's happening in America, but I actually have some reservations about it. And, you know, in terms of what else that administration is going to bring for the people, I think, personally, I think it's going to be really problematic for the people. But
you have to be very careful of the media too, because I don't know if you know that Elon Musk some months ago interviewed Donald Trump, and it was on X, and it went for a few. I just sort of chopped in there for a little bit, talking about nuclear energy as an alternative source of energy around the world. The media then reported that they were talking about nuclear weapons for war. Had I not been listening to them at that time, oh my God, these people are really dangerous. But I listened to it. It wasn't about that at all. They were talking about a cheaper source of energy around the world, and that's all they were talking about. So we have to be really careful because left-wing media is so captured by this ideology.
Yeah, that's true. But I think, you know, I don't know, personally, my opinion is that Trump has such a terrible record of violence against women, and you know, I don't really believe that he cares.
Of violence, though, he's a womanizer, but I've not heard of him being violent towards.
Well,
women.
he's been charged with and convicted of sexual assault. He's got a terrible history of violence against women, and like we said before, like, violence doesn't have to be physical. You know, he doesn't. I don't believe that Trump really cares about women at all, and I don't believe that he's doing any of this, you know, stuff that, you know, it might be good that he rolls back some of the winds of gender identity. You know, that's great. I've got no problem with that, but I think it will come at a big cost.
I think there are issues with Trump.
Yeah,
but I think ultimately, I think he wants to be popular.
Yeah, exactly. That's all he cares about, and he's a narcissist. He's a domestic violence perpetrator on a global stage. You know, Like he's a perpetrator of violence against women on a global stage. They all they kind of use a textbook. You can read them. There's a textbook for how you perpetrate violence against women. How you perpetrate coercive control. And he's a textbook abuser. So I think there are bigger problems that are going to come from him.
But I also think that no matter who you get at that level, you're going to find the same type of personality. So it's unfortunate. It's just it's politics.
Mm.
Who can you really trust as a leader these days? Who can
it's an interesting question.
I just think it would be great if Australia had a leader who was willing to stand up and say, sorry, but this has to end. This is not good for women and children. This is harmful to women and children.
A political party in Australia that does do that, Pauline Hanson. So
it's tricky to find, because Pauline Hanson spoke out so well against gender identity ideology this week, or recently, and against the harms of that for children and women.
Again, a very important issue that's facing many Australians, and I ask why. Here we go again. Here we go again. This is not my first attempt to bring this issue into the light, and it won't be my last. In fact, it's the 5th attempt for common sense. Let me go back at least a year and a half ago, have to be at least that, where we had parents and mothers come to this parliament, walked the hall, spoke to everyone and said, we want an inquiry into puberty blockers and in gender dysphoria and about the hormone treatment. They said they got a great response. But guess what? The 5th time now before this parliament, because I haven't been able to get common sense out of the senators in this place to realise how important it is to have this inquiry. And it's led by the Albanese Greens government. The Albanese government has become even more isolated in its denial of the harms caused by puberty blockers administered to children presenting with gender identity issues. Labor has become more isolated in their denial of the lack of clinical evidence supporting the safe use of these treatments. They have been isolated by our closest friends, the United Kingdom, the United States and just last week, New Zealand. Other countries are seeing the light on puberty blockers through studies conducted and the lack of evidence supporting their use. Belgium, Canada, the Netherlands, Switzerland, Finland, Italy and even Turkey. These countries have woken up. Here in Australia, the government is still asleep at the wheel. Here in Australia, the government has repeatedly denied an inquiry into the rapid increase in children attending gender clinics and how they are being treated. They claim their denial of an inquiry is to protect trans people and children with gender issues from harm. Can you believe that? From harm. But it's their denial of the truth which is causing more harm. The truth was laid bare by the Cass Review in the United Kingdom, the final report of which was published in April. This review was commissioned by the UK's National Health Service in 2020 in response to issues at the Tavistock Gender Clinic in London, especially a rapid, massive increase in the number of children being treated there.
I just think that for me personally, I try to hold on to my political integrity, and I would love to find someone who, like you say, who is brave enough to speak out against gender identity ideology, but who still holds social justice and, is not racist. I would like, the women's movement, movement against gender identity ideology to, really steer clear of the populist right, people like Pauline Hanson and Trump. But that's just my opinion. I can understand why some people, think that they might be the answer, but I really don't think they are, personally.
Well, if you take them out of the equation, who have you got? Because if you leave it to Labor and the
exactly,
it's only going to get worse. They're the only ones that will do something about it. And it's probably, when you look at the millions of kids, particularly with the kids that are going to be mutilated and sterilised, I'm going to go right to protect these kids. Because once it's over, we'll just get on with our lives. But these kids, their whole lives have been ruined.
Yeah. What we need is we need to start again and get woman means a female, adult, human person, literally written in black and white. I mean, we never knew that we needed that.
Yeah.
Like, we never knew that we needed to say that the sky was blue, because it just is. But once we've got all of this down and out, gender identity out, then maybe, then we'll be able to focus on getting the left back. But I just think the left at the moment is so I don't even know what the word is. They're so disgusting in politics.
I know, 100%.
The political left are so disgusting towards women.
I'm so angry that I voted left all my life that I would go back to them again.
Because I get that. I totally agree with that. Like, I consider myself, pretty politically homeless. Like, I think a lot of women have been saying that over the years with their disgust. Sorry?
I got to that point, and now I do support the right.
Yeah.
I've looked at them differently to the way I was and have listened and read and watched what they're actually saying without this being left. So you've got to hate them because the right's bad. And you sort of fed that all the time. But when you look, like, I've met with Liberal senators and, Queensland LNP ministers, and they're the ones willing to listen to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, at the moment I would consider myself without, I pretty much just spoil my votes, because I'm not going to vote right, I'm not going to vote left. I imagine there are some moderate,
if you spoil your vote and the left won by one vote, and so you've given them full rein to make it even worse.
I think, the example you used of, the children that are suffering from, so-called gender affirming care. Yes, maybe, we might be able to, like, with, the interventions from, like, right-wing Trump, a right-wing Trump government, might make some inroads for those kids and might, improve things. But there are going to be a whole load of other kids that are going to suffer because of those right-wing policies. So, I don't avoid right-wing just because people say they're bad. I avoid them because they have a whole load of other really problematic policies. So, I guess I'm just not, I know, I can see there are a lot of left-wing women who are starting to think Pauline Hanson's the answer, Trump's the answer, but I'm just not there.
Yeah, well, this issue isn't left or right, is it? I mean, this is about reality. This is about the health and well-being and sanity of women and children.
Yeah.
So you're going to be getting a lot of people coming to you to connect and strategize together who are going to be left and right.
Oh, absolutely.
Everybody knows that humans can't change sex. It doesn't matter what side of the political
absolutely, and that should that's so true, and that should be clear that we we're coming at this from a feminist women and children's rights perspective. We're not coming at this from a left wing or a right wing really perspective. We welcome anybody who has those gender critical views and who wants to make some change in that particular area. So I'm sure, yes, we probably will get people who have some different political views more broadly, but this is an issue that we want to come together on and try to make some change so that...
Public service too. Most public servants come from the left.
Well, yeah, that is, I think, probably true. Yeah, I think that is probably the case. So it'll be very interesting. And look, it's not something that we're asking people.
It doesn't matter, like to say.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's just, if
reality and feeling threatened in the workplace, they're feeling unsafe in the workplace. They don't know where to turn. They've got no support mechanism. So that's what offering is, this support.
It's an attempt to bring people together and, who have these views and to try to take some action. Just simply, actually, what we want is to make it so that people can just talk about it at work.
Yeah.
That is really the simple thing that we want to achieve. And because by talking about it, it will, people will be able to, how can I put it? When...
No, I don't know with this.
Sorry?
Man out of our toilets.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to change the silencing.
I mean, if you're at work and there's a man in the women's toilets, you want to be able to say, "Can you please leave?" And if he doesn't, you would hope that you would have some support from other people who know that there shouldn't be a man in the women's toilet. It's not that difficult.
No.
Solution, have male, female, and gender neutral. That's all it takes. But these men don't want gender neutral.
They won't. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
That's what
they won't want to use gender neutral. Yeah. Right. That doesn't suffice, does it?
No, because they've got to oppress women. They know women don't want them in.
Didn't they do a trans swimming event once, but no one turned up?
Yeah,
they put on a trans event because of the blokes that wanted to go into the women's. So they said, okay, we'll do a special event for you. No one turned up.
Oh, you're talking about, in the swimming.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a swimming. I thought we're not allowed to have women-only events, but they're allowed to have trans-only events.
Oh, yeah.
So hypocrisy that they advertise events and go trans people only, or, the queer people or whatever they say. They don't want anyone that's not from their community going to their events. Women.
Yeah. That's another thing in the workplace. There's all the, queer, what's it called? Working group or working party or, I'm sorry, I can't think of the name of it, but hey?
DEI?
You used to have network. So there'd be the queer network, but there's no women's network. And for a moment I thought, maybe I could start the women's network, but then no, I realized I won't be able to do that because that won't be allowed.
No.
Sorry?
Have you suggested that?
I could. I could try, but it'll be immediately. Immediately we will have to allow men in. Yeah. But it's worth a try. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there used to be women's networks in this organisation. I'm damn sure there used to be, but there's not now.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
I mean, imagine the disciplinary you'd get if you suggested a women's group that doesn't include men wearing fucking knickers.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been at work that have had miscarriages in toilets. How the hell? That's going to make men don't want women in their toilets either. It's just these trans men. Men don't want to be in a bathroom with a woman that's having a miscarriage. There's no privacy. None at all.
So many aspects to women's lives that we don't even talk about. We don't even talk about it because it's just what we do.
Yeah.
That men will never understand, and they wouldn't be able to do it for a day. These men that breastfeed.
Oh, it's outrageous.
This is the worst aspect for me because I'm currently doing it at the moment. It's like if a man actually had to breastfeed for, let's say, 48 hours, quit after hour 2, Because especially if you've got another child that you've got to look after, breastfeeding and looking after another child, it's like you have to do so many things in your brain to be able to get through the day.
Is mothers that are still breastfeeding will pump, what do you call it? They go to do that now if there's not a women's bathroom. So
I think there are rooms provided for breastfeeding, but that is a really interesting question.
But men can breastfeed now.
I know.
So a man could come in and be in there.
Theoretically, yeah. I mean, yeah. Why would it be a safe space? Nowhere else is. Yeah.
I don't think we have. I don't think we have them back home in England like you do in Australia. It's really good in Australia. I think so. Coming from England, where we don't have any breastfeeding rooms, like in shopping centres and stuff. We have breastfeeding rooms here. Fucking awesome. But now men can breastfeed.
Well, they can't really, but
they can't. But people think they can.
Yeah.
Go in there and pretend that they're doing the same sort of thing.
Oh, it's just disgusting beyond words.
It is. And also the double standards as well, like the standards that women are held to in their parenting, and that men can get away with this ridiculous fetish, using your baby to get off, and to justify or to, validate your sexual whatever. Yeah, it's just unbelievable, the double standards.
Men cannot breastfeed, and you know that men can't breastfeed for one reason. There's no I haven't checked, but I'm sure there isn't because I would know about it. There's no porn genre of men breastfeeding.
Oh, there probably is.
Of women. There are videos of women breastfeeding women who make videos, porny videos about it. Okay, there's nothing like that with men pretending to be women with all this milk flowing from their man-made boobs. That there isn't. That it doesn't work like that. Men cannot breastfeed.
Oh yeah, 100%. I don't think we need porn to prove that.
No, but there would be. That there would be in one place that there would be videos of men producing all this milk would be porn.
Yeah, true.
And there is none.
But I reckon
no videos of men producing a lovely amount of milk for their baby.
No, I mean it's just impossible. It's not. I thought that. I mean, I know it's ridiculously getting out of control, and there's the Lalesh Lead stuff that's happening, but it's so blatantly obvious that men can't breastfeed, and it's such an a colonization of women's, of womanhood, but I actually think there probably is, dark corners of the internet where men are getting off on, breastfeed, watching each other trying to breastfeed.
If you go on Reddit, male lactation Reddit, and it's literally nipples with a drop of milk coming out.
Yeah, but they're still getting
saying milk. That's even the wrong word. It's not milk. It's galactorium. Thanks, Jasmine Sussex, for introducing me to that word.
Yeah,
it's like a drop of something white coming out of his nipple.
Yeah, it's so disgusting. And I guess what I'm just saying is I'm sure they're getting off on it. There'll be men watching it getting off on it. That's all I'm saying. But no, they're not breastfeeding. Yeah, it's just. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Drug induced body modification. Yeah, it's gross.
It's the worst aspect of this whole thing for me is the men breastfeeding.
Hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Pardon?
Oh, it's just that it's not coming up when I speak.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah. Because I've been saying things and I'm thinking, I wonder if they could hear me.
Oh, what were you saying, Sue? Sorry. Maybe I'm just talking over you.
Yeah.
I get very annoyed about this breastfeeding shit.
Me too. What were you saying, Sue? Sorry.
Oh, I can't remember now. Because I noticed, I thought, when you're speaking, it comes up green, and it wasn't coming up green. So I thought, it's not working.
Oh.
You just couldn't get a word in.
So hopefully you'll get that many public servants, because what they've done, they've introduced self-ID from state to state together, like nationally, and just be really powerful, because
that's the goal.
They stack the workforce, can they?
That's right. That's right. Yep.
Well, okay, before we go then, Emma, just let's remind everyone how they can get in contact if they are in this situation where they are just feeling like they need to connect with other normal people. And can we just clarify as well, this is like teachers as well, this applies to
exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's like teachers, police, health workers, policy workers, what else? Ambulance, or hang on, are they government? I'm not sure. It depends. Like, local government, local council, federal government, anyone who is employed by an Australian government service, basically. And, then as the numbers grow, we can put people who are in the same state, we can put them in touch with each other if they want, or we can work as a group, whatever. Like, we'll see how it rolls out, how it evolves. But I agree, like, I would love it to be like a really strong, powerful national group that, advocates for government employees to be allowed to discuss this issue at work.
Isn't it strange though? Like, there's unions, but they're captured. People pay union fees, but they don't have a union to represent them.
Yeah, we can't get any help from the unions. Yeah, as far as I understand, they're
thinking that they're there to represent employees, but being infiltrated by this ideology.
Yes.
I know public servants that have approached the union and they won't support them.
Yes, I've heard about that as well. Yeah. So that was part of the thinking is, we've got no help from the unions, we've got no help from the employer, so we need to band together and create something ourselves, and fight for, change and, free the right to speak about this issue.
Yeah.
And keep our jobs. So that's the thinking.
Yeah.
Um,
And what was the email address again for people to contact?
Yep. So it's biologicalrealityaustralia@gmail.com. And then the details will be passed safely on to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, thank you for putting the work in to get this happening, and
thank you for all the work that you both do as well. And thank you so much for having me on here.
We'll have to have you back as the group grows and you can let us know.
100%. We can update you. I'd love to, keep the conversation going. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Finding out that this support group's available. It's getting the message out there, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
All right then, ladies.
Thank you both so much.
All right. All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.